Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Facebook Live. My deepest apologies. We had some technical issues. I think there are some settings between Facebook and Zoom that are having issues. So we had to resolve those. So we are like, say 20 minutes late. So sorry about that.
Never late.
We are perfect on time, right? It is what it is. So we took 20 minutes to figure out what the issue is. But there was a settings change in Facebook where it disabled apps from posting to this group. So I had to enable Zoom back. So here we are. It's 21st of April. I'm joined by our normal panel. We have Caesar, who is a channel and a medium and a spiritual teacher. Good evening, Caesar. We're joined by Eileen, our incredible Eileen, that is going to keep us streamlined. We're joined by Kelly, who is our Qigong teacher, one and only, and a spiritual teacher. Good evening, Kelly. We're joined by Travis as well, who is a musician and a spiritual teacher. Good evening, Travis. And I have Ryan in the middle of my screen. So good evening, Ryan. Everybody knows you. He does a lot of spiritual work, presence practice, and as well as moderating the main Eckhart community site, right? And of course, our favorite, April, seems to be our latest favorite, who is a psychic and a medium and a spiritual teacher. Good evening, everyone. I don't know why April looks faint to me in the background. Is it just me or is it? There we go. I think it's the light. It's the light. Okay, perfect. So did anyone have questions ready-made? I didn't have any.
Move the light.
Perfect.
There wasn't any questions on there, but I did mention in the group that this was just a great opportunity to practice our non-resistance, acceptance, non-resistance.
So I'd start off with one thing that if you remember last week, April was talking about there was a diagnosis that your stepfather had received, right? First of all, what I wanted to say is, so Travis is part of we have a small messenger group that we've been going back and forth on what is going on with School of Awakening 2021 and what is going on between the group meditation and the Facebook Live. And what I have to say is it is a total honor and a privilege that whatever we've been discussing in the Facebook Live, it seems to be something that Eckhart actually talked about either in his opening retreat or he has talked about it even in his session, like on April 8th, I think he had a session, a live session, and the same topics I talked about, the Alzheimer's, he talked about Alzheimer's. He even talked about that part where Eileen, you were saying you slept for 5 days. So he was talking about how consciousness withdraws itself and the sweetness. We were talking about the sweetness and preciousness of life being pulled, right? So since we've had so much of diagnosis, there's a pandemic, people are dealing with illnesses all the time, right? We've had a heightened number of COVID cases in India. So our members in India are dealing with family members that are affected by COVID. And then there are quite a few fellow members that have been taking care of parents that have dementia or Alzheimer's or an ill parent. So one of the statements that Eckhart made during School of Awakening is, it seems tragic only on the relative plane. It is not tragic at all at the absolute level. So I want y'all to discuss, because it is very, very important when we are dealing with family members. First of all, the paranoia, right? That there is a rise in the COVID cases wherever you're living, right? So maybe a lot of family members are passing away, or a lot of family members are actually getting infected. They may be in numbers of 10, 11, something of that nature, right? So this goes back to our conversation, April and Kelly, on the soul and the soul contract, right? Of all these diseases, like diagnoses, like people receive a diagnosis of a terminal illness. What is this diagnosis of a terminal illness? So what does Eckhart mean? It seems tragic only on the relative plane, but at the absolute, it is not tragic at all. April, did you want to get started? Thank you.
Sure. This is a topic that I actually just spoke of in my group on Tuesday. Just had this conversation. Actually, I started the group out on emotional intelligence, because to me, emotional intelligence has way more value than intelligence. Beyond, it's immeasurable for me. You can be the most intelligent person, but if you can't control those emotions, what does it matter? So, but the conversation morphed into what happens when we die? What happens on the other side? And why do people die? So what he means by that is, again, when I say that you cannot understand this from the human perspective, you have to go to the spiritual perspective. You have to gain that awareness that we are eternal, that we don't actually die, that it is the physical body that dies, because the physical body has organs. Now, and it kind of seems, maybe a little cold-hearted, or maybe like, I don't know, maybe some people perceive like, oh, we don't care. No, it's actually not that. It's just that we have a greater understanding that, well, what's her name? Abraham Hicks says it the best. She says, if you knew, like, you're upset with somebody, you think they should get the death penalty. She says, you would keep those buggers around if you knew what it was like on the other side. You would not let them go to the other side, right? Because there's only one emotion on the other side, and it's love. It's love. Everything is love over there. There's only one emotion. There's no regret. There's no pain. There's no remorse. There's no, you're good, you're bad. So when you pass over, that's what you pass over into. So when he says that, that's what he's talking about. He's talking about going into that eternal, all-knowing, loving source. And when you're with that loving source, nothing else matters. This physical world, it's nothing. It's minute when it comes to that. So, but then one of the things that I personally have been noticing with COVID, and all of the fear, is I'm personally seeing a rise in cancer cases. And I think it's all the fear that we have been experiencing for the last year and a half, which is a terminal illness. So but even with that, I'm going to say, so does that mean that, COVID is making people pass away? No. Okay. Because you have a soul plan. So COVID doesn't get to trump your soul's plan, right? It doesn't get to take over your soul's plan. If you're not supposed to go, you will get COVID and you will heal. Or you will get cancer and you will heal, or you will get in a car crash and you will heal. So that's the one thing that I want everybody to know, is that it doesn't matter what illness you get. It doesn't trump your soul's plan. If you are not meant to go, you will not go. Bottom line, period. Now, there's one thing that maybe we could bring back around in a little bit once everybody else has their say, is that there is what I call exit points on your soul's plan. Okay, there's exit points set up that if you are not going to be able to accomplish your full plan, there are some what we call exit points. So for now, I'm going to leave it there. But the thing is that on the soul level, everything is all love, and there are no regrets. There's nothing to regret. Once you get over to the other side, it's all love, and it's wonderful. There's no regrets. It's bliss.
Thank you, April. I'll keep moving through the panel, and that way we can kind of discuss this before I say something. If I get something, then I will surely speak to it, but I'll just move through the panel because I want to hear April talk about the exit plan too. Ryan, I know you're here for a shorter period of time through our talk. What do you think is Eckhart's? I posted it on the chat as well. Okay. That it seems tragic only on the relative plane. It is not tragic at all at the absolute. What does he mean by that?
Well, yeah, the absolute is like non-dual. So there isn't suffering and happiness bouncing back and forth like it is in this world. The absolute is like the depths of presence, stillness. It's a knowing, and it's a surrender, an acceptance. It's a deep pointer though. It seems tragic only in the relative. I think part of the relative is why something would be interpreted as tragic, right? Is if we're misidentified as being a little piece of the story and not seeing that we are the whole story. Then you experience tragedy. You experience, oh, there's some hellish things that happen on the earth. There are hellish things that happen in our life. But it's like in the absolute, in the grand scheme, nothing can happen in an individual life that is really big enough to outshine the immense power and brightness that the absolute self is, that the absolute being is. It makes any life situation or challenge, no matter how insane it could possibly be, just a tiny dot in the infinite spectrum. And yeah, well, another way to approach it too is to contemplate what is real. What does it mean to be real? A fun rabbit hole. Because like for one, anything that's impermanent, anything that's subject to death isn't real. It's more of a dreamlike coming and going of birth and death. And so what's left? Well, if anything subject to death is unreal, then what is real? Because it's like everything in physical reality. When he says like, oh, did he say surface? I thought he might have said something about surface. When he uses the term surface, it's like the surface is the form reality. It's everything that's subject to impermanence. It's our bodies, it's the walls, it's even the planet, it's the sun, it's everything in physical existence. Every single form is inevitably going to redissolve. And so it's sort of a temporarily real and then gone again. And so if that's constantly happening, you know, we're asking ourselves while we're in the mix of this soup of birth and death, things constantly, even our own little bursts of life are incredibly short. Who are we really? Who am I in all of this? And the absolute is the knowing that I am the awareness, the experiencer that the forms kind of attach to and then lose, and then attach to and then lose. I guess an uncountable number of times. And I as in Ryan just happen to be one little form of that. But yeah, it's a quite a big,
quite a deep topic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And I think even he said something about we have existed five times this whole, whatever we call existence has existed and disappeared, right? He said 5 times, but what Sadhguru says is it has to do somewhere about 84, like it's connected with the number 84. So 63 of those 84 have already existed and dissolved back. Whatever, the sun, the galaxies, the universe, whatever is the manifested world has dissolved 63 times. And we are living in the 21, the 63 and 21 together make 84. And I don't know why that 84 number, somebody who follows numbers, numerology should say something about the 84, but that's what Sadhguru says. So it's not even 5 existences have been created and destroyed. They've been 63 existences that have been destroyed. But our thinking mind doesn't say that, right? Our thinking mind says we are so important. And then we fight for our life. So thank you for that pointer, Ryan. Kelly, did you want to say something about what April said and Ryan said?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a pretty deep topic. This is a fun one. I personally experienced probably, if I'm correct, 3 exit plans in my own lifetime already and chosen not to. The experiences I had growing up as a kid showed me a great deal of what we're talking about. The thing about the 84 and the 5s, you got to understand the cultural, historical point of reference for those numbers, and that certain cultures like certain numbers. So they tend to get repeated. The 3-dimensional reality is very, very important to the structural function of the expression of creation. So even though while we may be here for a quote unquote limited time, it is very, very important anchoring the expression of creation into the physical world and down into the elemental realms of the 2nd and 1st dimensions. So the perspective of connecting with the eternal and understanding how in the 3rd dimensional reality, we are conditioned to be attached and ego invested and emotionally invested and triggered by linear time. That is part of the illusion. And the illusion is there to make use of our reptilian brain, our emotional defense mechanisms, our shadow, our ego programming to trigger us and to get us hooked into and stay hooked into the illusion of linear physical three-dimensional time. And the automatic pushback against that is to reject linear time or to reject the importance of three-dimensional reality and to go off into metaphysical concepts about the nature of reality to avoid understanding third-dimensional reality deeper and the actual keys inside our physical form, all the information that we actually store energetically within us that we can learn how to feel. And this is one of the things about people passing on, is that people who have lived long lives, even children who are born prematurely and who are only alive for a couple hours, actually bring forward an immense amount of energy. All the people that they touch, their families, the nurses, the doctors, there is a lot of information on this planet all the time. And the way that we access it is through feeling. And this is why being present is so important. And I completely agree with Eckhart on the whole misunderstanding of the tragedy, because in the immediateness of the third dimensional reality and linear time, sorry, I'm throwing around some highfalutin metaphysical concepts here, but it's sort of, you know, the carrot in front of the donkey pulling the cart, right? We're dangling this carrot to keep, you know, our ego keeps dangling these carrots to keep us going. When we forget we've got all this stuff in the cart, right? We could just stop and have a picnic right there on the side of the road. And that's just the obsession, the fixation that we have with linear time means that we fear death. We fear it ending because we fear that we know we have all of this inside of us. And we're all looking to figure out how to access it, which is why the fear of death is so huge, is because we do not understand that we have it within us. So that when we actually stop and step back into observation and let ourselves feel the ocean of the eternal within us, we go, oh, wait a minute. It's like, there's the song I was looking for. Dang. It's like, I got this wagon full of carrots. What the heck? You know? So instead of dragging ourselves along, when we stop and pause and listen and feel the eternal within us, we gain that perspective. This is why understanding the ego is so important, and why I do appreciate Eckhart's work on this subject so much, is because he does such a beautiful, beautiful job of synthesizing and distilling so much information about the ego into really concise, conceptual, and easily digestible pieces. And people passing on, it's a reality of the illusion. It's part of the illusion. And again, the emotional attachment and then the release, all the emotional energy that we put into a relationship with someone, and then suddenly that relationship is not there. And we have to let go of that emotional energy, is actually a gift back to ourselves by letting ourselves feel deeper, triggering ourselves to grieve, triggering ourselves to feel beyond that relationship and to move past that space. Not that I'm, you know, taking away from or wanting to take away from anyone's experience or anyone's grief over someone passing. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it is tragic that we are stuck, or that for the majority of us, we are fixated and stuck on this fear of death and this limited perception of reality as being linear so much, and not understanding how multidimensional we really are. And when we connect to the absolute, when we go inside, when we're present with ourselves, when we are emotionally responsible, because emotional intelligence actually encompasses all levels of intelligence, not just mental, not just heart-based, but also spiritually, that whole envelope of our complete intelligence. So looking at the bigger picture instead of being focused on that little carrot dangling in front of us, and stopping the cart and going, hey, what am I pulling anyhow? Like, what's going on back there? Oh wait, someone's got there's other people back there. There's like a party going on behind me. I totally forgot because I'm so fixated on being ahead, looking ahead. And we forget how beautiful we are. We forget how amazing we are as human beings. We are spiritual beings having a third dimensional reality. But that does not mean that the third dimensional reality is the only reality, because we can access our alignment with source. We can, if we go inside, if we take the time to do that. And so, yeah, the perspective on death and dying is one that is really, really important to look at and to understand and to see whether or not there are any spaces or feelings that we are not addressing and not looking at, because those will be the keys to actually being with yourself, with your heart, and understanding how you are blocking yourself and how to, stop dangling the carrot in front of you and sort of like turn around and check out what, the resources that you actually have with you already. So my 2 cents. I'll stop there. I can keep going. This is like one of my favorite topics. So I'll just leave it there.
We'll come back because April talked about exit plan, right? One pointer that I heard you say, Kelly, is when somebody is passing away. So it's not the question that person, the soul contract is not, that soul is serving its soul contract by exiting, right? Choosing to exit at that point.
Yes.
But at the same time, their soul contract also is to cause the grief, to bring us to the present moment.
Yes.
I heard you say that. So thank you. Thank you for that pointer. Look at the amazing interconnected. I mean, it is all like you can just get awestruck by when you start to examine from what is eternal in us. You examine these events and see that person having the Alzheimer's needs to have that Alzheimer's, because the Alzheimer's is not only for that person, but it is also for you to come into the present moment, right? It's humbling you through that experience of serving your mother. And I mean, Travis, I'll come to Travis too. He already does caregiving. I've done caregiving a couple of years back to a best friend. It is very humbling. I mean, to wash somebody's hair and it's sticky, icky, they have not had a bath in 3-4 days, and now you're giving them a bath like with a towel and soap, like light soap, and wiping them down and everything. Like, it is very humbling. Like, there cannot be anything more humbling than serving another human being direct one-on-one.
Yep.
Right? Touching them and giving the love, giving the presence to them, right? Like washing their hair and serving them. So perfect. Thank you, Kelly, for that pointer. Caesar, did you want to say something? I thought that you were about to say something, so.
No, everybody's made really good points on this. Eckert said something to the effect that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. And herein lies the peace of God. The word threatened, well, first of all, we'll start with the word seems. And that to me is just, it appears to be, because tragic is a mental construct. It is necessary, as you said, to have that experience, not just for the person that's affected by it, but for those around. At an early age, my parents took in at separate times both my father's mother and my mother's mother, and both of them at different times had Alzheimer's. So I got to experience that for a few years. One was in addition to cancer, but I seen the human change the whole mind construct through the Alzheimer's and not even know who they were. And it was humbling. And my point was that years later, my mother apologized to us kids for quote unquote having to go through that and experience that. And I was grateful and humbled to tell her that that portion of my life and being able to witness and be there for her and help take care of her was the most awesome and humbling experience of my life. And it shaped me into being a compassionate, caring person because of that. And I tried to, tell her that it was the best thing that could have ever happened to have that experience. So I agree with you very much. It was a humbling experience, and it taught me a lot about. But yeah, so the contrast is there, on a relative plane. So that's the word tragic is a mental construct, and it is important, like Kelly and April both said, to experience that, to be able to find a lesson, find the deeper meaning for yourself. If you are within the range of experiencing something of that nature that seems tragic, it is for the benefit of your well-being and your soul, and it is something that you signed up for, to have that experience, to have an opportunity to learn and grow from it. And in most of the instances, that would be probably to teach someone compassion and acceptance, and the true loving nature of love itself, the essence of what we are. So in a nutshell, that would be my answer there. And the absolute is just as Ryan and everybody said, it is the essence of all things combined, without duality, the oneness of everything. And as April said, on the other side, it's just nothing but love and high vibrations, and there is no experience of anything other than that. So, but the contrast definitely is important to experience the hardships. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Caesar.
Yes. I have to plug in real quick.
Sure. I think I like the fact that he said tragic is just a label, because the thinking mind wants to go into that loop, right? Label this is so tragic, and then that tragic, why should my mother pass away, or why should my father pass away from Alzheimer's? And then here comes the emotion, what Eckhart calls the loop, the thought creating the emotion creating the thought. Our addiction to unhappiness, greatest obstacle is this conditioned pattern of unhappiness that exists in humanity, of the thought creating the emotion creating the thought. So from the absolute, if you can see the thought, that what Caesar was saying, that tragic is just a label, and we're about to get sucked into the tragic, right? The thought creating the emotion. And in his module, one of the modules, he says, right, that the victim identity, then it becomes the victim identity, and the victim identity is extremely disempowering. Like the ego loves, there is the seduction of the victim identity is so strong that you cannot get out of it. There'd be a person that is in the victim identity, then they've gone from tragic to, okay, now I'm going to use alcohol to fall below thought, and now alcohol addiction, that alcohol addiction leading to some other addiction, and that addiction leading to some kind of terminal illness, right? So they've spiraled down. And all it started was what you said, Caesar, with one label, that this is tragic. It shouldn't be happening. The mind coming in, so beautiful. Thank you. Travis, did you want to say something about this? Thank you.
Well, yeah, it's nice to be here with everyone. It's nice to listen to everyone's heart and what everyone has to say. It's been my experience that there isn't any tragedy that lasts forever. I can carry it with me as long as I want, but can recall it. But tragedies and triumphs, they come and go in time, and ecstasies and agonies, they come and go in time. And the question arises for me, to whom or what are these triumphs and tragedies happening? And so for me, I feel like what's going on is there's this increasing awareness or sense of awareness around, there's a recognition of this constant. And I see, and I see myself in that. I see myself as that. I am that which everything is happening to. And it's only by my own, the fact that I am, that I can recognize any of this. It's because I am, it's because I am here and now, that I can know anything at all. This is the primary reality that I know. So without my being here, God is not possible. I have to be here first. Otherwise, I could never know the uttermost. I could never know the divine if it wasn't by the sheer virtue of my own existence. Or if existence is, I know Eckhart Tolle doesn't like that word, because it actually, existence in the way that the word is, it means to stand out. And so it's actually, it points more to the phenomenal. So depending on how you want to use that word, because all that exists, all that springs forth into being, it belongs to time. It comes and goes in time. And I know that for me, tragedies, the secret gift that comes inside of every tragedy is oftentimes when things are so incredibly painful. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Good to be with you here. I know for me that the hardships that I've endured in this life, the losses of things that have meant so much to me, have actually helped to draw my attention towards and to find that place inside of myself that is not subject to harm. To find that which cannot be diminished or tarnished. It's not under any threat whatsoever. Nothing can threaten it. It's actually through my experience of pain that I've been able to find and recognize and identify with and stabilize all the more in that space and know myself as that, which does not come and go in time. I am that. And so this is the immutable truth that we all share. It's the very heart of all beings, is the same heart that we all share, is that which does not come and go in time, and that which cannot be harmed in any way whatsoever. It's that which everything happens to. All of the appearances and disappearances, all of the transient comings and goings and gains and losses and joys and sorrows, and all of the poetry of the phenomenal relative dimension of life that is actually, I can't remember who it was, said eternity is in love with the creations of time. I think it was William Blake. And if you think about if you were just, maybe your hand is interlaced with a loved one and you're watching the sunset over the ocean. It's so special. It's so poetic because it goes in time. It's just there for a brief moment in time. This is the world we live in and the world we all share. And it's made more beautiful by the tragedies. If it was only joys, if it was, those joys wouldn't mean as much. They mean so much because of the tragedies we endure. They mean so much because of the hardships we endure. And it's easier to embrace the whole of it and see the usefulness and the meaning in loss, the meaning in tragedy, when we can recognize ourselves as that which it is all happening to. We are that constant. And that's what we're here to realize. That's the one thing that it's the most, of all things that we could ever accomplish or do or see, this is the one thing that our main purpose in being here is to recognize that as ourselves. That which all of the change is happening to. So if you think about like a scientific experiment, you have a controlled and a variable. That's how you can measure the variable, is against the controlled. You're the controlled and the world is the variable. So you are the touchstone by which all that happens is measured. It's, you know, if a car is going 60 miles an hour, you're the 0 miles an hour that the 60 miles an hour is measured against. You are the stillness by which the movement is measured, by which the distance is measured, by which the up and down and gain and loss and joy and sorrow is measured. And I think that that's why we're here, is to discover that. And then we can enjoy the world all the more, and share in that and be stronger together. I like your shirt, Eileen.
That was it. Thank you. So he gave a pointer of this too shall pass, or the guy who says maybe, or all that arises passes away, because from that immutable in us that always stayed, no matter all these tragedies came when, there was an immutable in us that's still here. How many ever 10, 20, 30, 40 years later in chronological time, which in the timeless, it's 1 second. Probably it's happening right at in the timeless, it's just happening, right? All this is happening. The other thing I like about Eckhart, him using the term animating life force. So you know that there is a consciousness somewhere else. There's a non-physical energy somewhere else that is animating this form, or any form, even if it's a stone, or even if it's this pen. The atoms in this pen are being animated by a non-physical energy, right? This cosmos is conscious. That we can know for sure from what is immutable in us. So thank you, Travis. Beautifully said. And I went like into stillness, like got more still, because he's that way, right, Caesar? Caesar gave you a comment, Travis. Thank you. Eileen, did you want to say something about this topic?
I felt like I didn't have anything to add after April spoke. And then Kelly and Travis just loaded even more on. And I was like, wow, no, I really have enjoyed listening to everybody's responses, but I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I'll go back to April. Did you want to talk about the exit plan, April? Thank you.
So what happened is I was searching for an answer to my unhappiness. I was searching for an answer to my lifelong depression. I had a very rough life. From the get, it was a rough life. And, you know, being forced to get married at 15, and then I'm married to an abusive alcoholic. And then I'm with somebody else who It's not necessarily abusive, but not emotionally there. I have this idea that this world is not nice, and it's not fun, and it's not pretty. So it sets me out for the seeking of this answer. What the heck is all this about? Why do I have to suffer here? That's the question that I think most people ask. Most people are trying to find the answer. Why am I suffering? Why do I have to do this? And when you seek that answer out, that's what lands you to where we are today. That's what lands you to this group. That's what lands you to spirituality, to your soul seeking. And when you get to this point, you have no choice but to come face to face with these teachers who are saying to you, you are eternal. You last for what? I'm what? I'm eternal. I'm not eternal. My grandma just died of cancer. And I'm not being insensitive, guys. I'm just saying, right? And that seems like a very real thing. It's very real. What are you talking about? She was here yesterday. She's not here today. And that legitly, my grandmother was murdered when I was a child, and I seriously seen her the day before. And the next day she was murdered. And it was like, whoa, what do you mean everything's eternal? And when you start to really understand that, because inside of you is a soul, there is a soul inside of you. That is the ray of the sun. You cannot cut the ray from the sun no matter how much you try. You cannot cut the light from the moon. You cannot separate those. You cannot separate that soul from within you. That's the eternal part. That is the part that we are saying is eternal. Okay? That is the part of you that has agreed to come down here. When you agree to come down here to this earth plane and play out this game of life, this movie, you set a plan. Your plan may be to not ever accomplish anything in life. You might be the 50-year-old in grandma's basement. You might be Einstein. You might be Trump. You might be me. You pick what you're going to do. The degree of what you're going to do is look at the world. Look at how many millions of people, billions of people, and look at all the different things that everybody does. So you have this plan that you set forth. You have this goal for what your soul wants to do. And the farther your soul wants to evolve, the bigger the plans, the bigger the goal, per se. Okay. So for me, I picked a lot of plans. I should have just smacked myself. So I picked some big plans, and I always had this really strong driving force inside of me that I was going to, that's one of the things that, even though my dad, I've talked about him being angry, he gave me a lot of drive. Thank God for him. I'm so glad I picked him to be my dad, because he gave me so much force, and I needed that force. Now, if all the tragedies in my life, if I had not been led to the spiritual path, my spiritual awakening, my shadow work, my dark night of the soul, my healing, my childhood traumas, if I would not have went on that path and done the soul searching, most likely I would not heal. If you do not heal so that you can stay on your path, so you can accomplish your goal, so your soul can evolve, because you've just had too much trauma, you will take what I call exit points. Exit points are set up throughout your life, and those are the spots where you should have died. You had a car accident, you almost drowned, you had an illness. You should have died. You should have passed, but you didn't. You chose to stay here. And I'm pretty sure that my mother and my brother took exit points because they were not healing. They could not get over the trauma. They couldn't separate the physical self and see the gifts in the trauma as spiritual lessons and blessings to move forward. They just couldn't do that. They were too hurt. And so now if you can still have an exit point, like Kelly had numerous, but he didn't take them because he had to stay here and he had to do what he's supposed to do. So if you, and this is again, you guys, why I know it's hard to understand this from the human perspective, but this is why somebody, there's a bridge out there. I can't remember the name of the bridge, but apparently there's some bridge, like, I don't know if it's New York or something. There's some bridge out there that they literally have guards on the bridge because it's a suicide bridge. Right? And like you jump, you're gone. Well, somebody jumped and they lived. Why? That's insane because they're not supposed to go. You don't get to trump your soul's plan. You just don't. Unless your soul sees that you are just way far off and you're just not going to heal. And okay, let's go get healed, because on the other side, there's only one emotion. There's only one vibration. That is love. That's it. There's only one frequency. So when you get to the other side, everything that you've been through gets healed. It's all great. It's awesome. So that's another reason why your soul may sign up for too much, is because your soul's like, don't worry, we're coming back here. It's going to be sweet. No, it's not. Stop, please. So, but that's why, okay, that's how I see exit points. That's how I see the soul plan. And somebody else may have a different perspective, but from living it personally and watching, and then also, doing the readings, the mediumship, it's the same story that I've heard. Okay. No one goes before their time, but we do have exit points if you are that far away from your goal. Okay. Negative feelings, negative emotions, not being able to heal. What that means is that is how far away from source you are. You are that far off from source, from being aligned with source, that you are all love, that you are worthy and infinite love and peace. So that's my explanation.
When you were saying that about people choose their exit points, if somebody committed suicide, that would be their, they know that they're not healing and it's time to exit.
The soul, it's the soul. So that my example is, I told you guys, I've always had a Native American friend in my life because I have a lot of Native American in my family, both sides. I know I have the whole German look, but I've got Native American both sides. So I had this Native American friend, and I used to do nails when I was going to college. It was one of the 500 things that I've done. And this lady come in, started to get her nails done. She's Native American. Her and I became friends. We started doing sweat lodges and drum circles and all this. And she came in to get her nails done. It was going to be the last time, but we were done friends at that point. Started talking about my brother. And she looked at me and she said, "Is he on the other side?" And I said, "Jackie, why would he be on the other side? He's 27. He was already going. It was already set. She already felt it. The spirit had already decided that my brother was not going to heal and he wasn't going to be able to correct the path. My brother was facing another charge and a 14-year tail. So my brother was facing about 25 years in prison. And apparently he would not have been able to achieve his goal, his life goal, by going there. So the soul said, okay, we're not going to be able to do this. You're not healing. the soul is the one that is in charge. That the human, we're not in charge, because how many people try to commit suicide a day, a year? It doesn't work because it's not your time. The soul is in charge. God's in charge. God doesn't, he doesn't take us if it's not our time.
Thank you for that, April. I think Steve Taylor has a book about people transforming through, or he speaks about it, and he talks about people jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, and there's people who've survived that jump, right? If anybody's in San Francisco, that's pretty popular spot to jump off the bridge. So another thought that came to me when you were talking about that was their exit plan. So if anybody is going through this COVID and actually exiting, that soul is choosing this to be a statistic so that the world, so I want everyone out there who is not understanding to understand the noble act that soul is actually choosing. The nobility in that choice of exiting using COVID as a method of passing away is, if we didn't have these statistics, if we didn't have hundreds of thousands of people passing away, how is humanity going to, it's the same thing as the Holocaust. If the Holocaust had not happened, we would not have been as compassionate as we are now, because we understand our ignorance. The world, the planet understands how ignorant humanity was of that degree of torture, right? That they did not move, like it didn't move, the degree of compassion was not there for 6 million people. The same thing, anybody passing away from COVID is because of that. Alzheimer's is the same way. I was listening to Dr. Mark Hyman talk. I didn't even finish the whole podcast that he has posted on his page. Alzheimer's, there are about 70 million. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people passing away from COVID. There are going to be 70 million people being affected by Alzheimer's and passing away using Alzheimer's. What is that an indicator of? It's showing us how, so what Dr. Mark Hyman is talking about is that our soil is depleted. Like the past 200-300 years, we've depleted the soil. We are not eating nutrient-dense food, and that nutrient, the density, the nutrients in our food are so low that is leading to Alzheimer's, dementia, all kinds of illnesses, right? And COVID is another example. So it all goes back to the whole climate change. We can talk about that on another day maybe, but that's all. These souls are choosing to be a statistic, right, April? And look at the like it's humbling to see that. It's such a sacred, reverent action that that soul is taking, that they're choosing that particular type of statistic so that we learn. That is a lesson to the rest of the humanity, that look how many people have Alzheimer's. Look how
and
many
Poonam,
people...
that's why Eckhart says to the absolute, it's not. That's why. It's not tragic. That's why.
Perfect. Thank you. Caesar, did you want to say something about this? What April said? That's why Abraham says it's a croaking experience.
Yeah, right. The exit points. I'm totally in agreement with everything that April had said. And much of the way exit points come by instances such as COVID, like you said, and other instances that we are probably not aware of. So I really don't have much to add on that. I think April really put a nice big exclamation point on the whole explanation of the exit points. Much better than I can, for sure. It's beautifully explained. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, did you want to say something about this or anything?
I just thank you. I already said it to her in the chat box, but absolutely grateful for hearing that from beginning to end, just that whole explanation that sheds a lot of light.
Thank you, Eileen. Travis, did you want to say something about this? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's an interesting topic. Well, I think that one thing that rings true for me is that there's much more to who we are than this single incarnation. I don't claim to understand it entirely, but I know for me and my own experience in this life, I could feel that from a young age. As probably first noticed it in my teenage years, there were places that I would find myself, within myself, and I'd go, there's no way that I could have come to this place within myself in 17 years. And so for me, that's a reality, that there's a soul's journey. And I think that, I think of my mother. She had a very, she had a wonderful life, but she also had a lot of trauma and a lot of pain and a lot of huge challenges and just atrocities and, horrible things happen in her life. And she had a lot of pain that she carried around with her. And the years while she was here, she didn't find a way or learn or know how to find the tools to process and unpack and heal and let go of that pain, release herself of that pain, free herself from all that she was carrying. It was a heavy burden for her, to the point where, it's like, my mom she's been in, she's had numerous car accidents where people just hit her, broadside her in the intersection or something. Like, she became almost a magnet for these things. And it only got worse in her later years. And anyone that knows her very well, I think, I can think of a few very close friends and family members who it's almost like, I almost want to say it's like the Lord's tender mercies in a way. It's like there are these exits. It's like, if you just, sometimes you need to just forfeit the game. You're not gonna, hang on and just keep getting beat up and beat up and beat up each round after round after round. I'm gonna forfeit and call it. And so I feel, my mom, she had an aneurysm and then never fully recovered from that, and then had lung cancer and died of lung cancer. And so her last few years were very, very difficult. And to me, I feel like it was a gift, a parting gift. She died on Easter. And that felt really special to me, because, to kind of go back to everything I was saying in the last time I spoke tonight, I could see all the more that essence, that part that doesn't change, that part that isn't affected by all that pain, as things kind of crumbled and fell apart around her in those last years. And then when she passed, you could see that essence goes on. And I agree with April. It goes back into that love. It goes back into that wash of pure essence, pure life essence. There's mercy in that. And then we can go and have a go at it again and take these challenges on again. And we'll do that time and time again, perhaps until we see or learn whatever it is, you know, that we're here to learn, which to me, again, I really feel is to know ourselves as that immutable truth and recognize that in everything and see that it's all pervasive and that we indeed are that. Yeah, it's an interesting, you know, I also have I have a friend I was speaking with recently who was thinking of suicide and you know, and yeah, it's just an interesting thing to think about, that there are those kind of doors along the way. And I agree with what April said, that that's not our time, it's not going to work. You know, you're still going to be here. You know, you just know you need to deal with this stuff. And so I think the best we can do is try to befriend life and not have it, like, I like how Eckhart Tolle phrases when he says we have an antagonistic relationship with life or the universe, and so to take on more of a friendly relationship with it, try and meet these challenges, and know that it's not, you know, life's not trying to torture us. It's not trying to screw us up or screw us over. It's trying to help us. And if we can realize that and not be so paranoid about life, and build a friendly relationship with life, then I think we'll be able to meet and work through the challenges that life puts in our way. They're there to help us, the challenges that life presents us with. So.
I'm so sorry for what your mother went through, Travis. It seems.
No, she's a real trooper, you know, a real very strong spirit. So it's part of her journey, and you know, I'm just happy to be able to share part of it with her. So, yeah. And thank you. Yeah.
I'm not sure if Eckhart said this. I don't know who said this, but I kind of think it is Eckhart. He says if a soul is a young soul, then they suffer more. The suffering is a lot more for a younger soul. And also already had their suffering, right? So they may not suffer in whatever lifetime that we see them not suffering, then they are not suffering. Like we see people born in, what does he call it? Trust fund baby. They have a trust fund and they just enjoy life, kind of thing. So to me, when I see that degree of suffering, right, it is also another humbling experience, Travis. Like I know one of my neighbors, she told me same kind of story. Like when she was 18, a boat hit the side of her face and her whole face was broken and then repaired back. And she's a beautiful woman, right? And she had all kinds of types of cancer. She was in hospice when I met her, right? But to me, when I watch that soul, I mean, that human being, there's a lot of respect that in spite of all these, in spite of being what you were saying, right? What do you call it? Being knocked down so many times. Look at the strength of that spirit, that it's still suffering physically, right? They have cancer. She had like 15, 16 types of cancer. They still are suffering, but they still want to live and experience the suffering. And how humbling is that, right? So every human being is so, there's a sacredness about that human being, even though they may not be when they're in front of us, it doesn't mean that they're Eckhart Tolle and you can feel an amazing presence. They may be going through their physical suffering, but there's some kind of sacredness in their suffering as well, right? So that is what is like you have to bow down, like in humility and gratitude when we see something of that nature. So thank you so much for sharing that experience. Beautiful. Kelly, did you want to say something about what April said? Thank you.
Exit points and soul contracts. They go hand in hand. Before I learned Qigong when I was 12-ish, about to be 13, I'd already experienced dozens of exit points because of my asthma, and had many out-of-body experiences that really showed me that there was a lot more to reality than our third dimensional physical attachment to 3D reality and our five senses. And I completely agree with everything April said. The reality of exit points is a reflection of our soul contract's decision to seed potentials and the path of learning that we've chosen when we embody and come here. There is nothing tragic about life. The illusion, our separation from source, causes us to suffer, because when we are separate from source, and when we've been cut off, or we cut ourselves off intentionally from source, when we are separated and we lose that knowledge, we lose that perspective of the greater game, of the greater Barnum and Bailey show going on, we forget ourselves. We forget that we have the capacity to love, to be kind, to be gracious, to be filled with grace. We forget because we get so fixated on that carrot of that linear little path in front of us. Go, 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 go. I feel you, Travis, on what you went through with your mom. That's some deep learning there, man. I took care of my best friend for 8 years. Humbling. We became really, really close. Still, lots of love between the two of us. I even went to the Philippines with him, and so he could get married. And he gets around in a scooter. I've and now I'm caring for my dad after his car accident. So watching events unfold, like watching. And I've had some really, really, really profound, beautiful conversations with my friend Sean, my best friend who I went to the Philippines with, about his situation. He's got spinal muscular atrophy, which means that the nerve signals do not get to his muscles. They literally take like 5 times as long. So his muscles atrophy. The spinal the ganglions and everything like that have atrophied to the point where it takes like 5 to 10 times as long for the messages to get through his body. And he's a beautiful human being. Like he loves people. Like he just loves people, because you realized early on the onset of his learning experience that he had a choice: either be a miserable, unhappy, bitter person, or actually, go, hey, so what? Life's still awesome. I can have awesome experiences. I can still be myself, even though I have to get around on a scooter. Very, very strong individual, very, very profound individual, great, amazing human being. My own experiences as a kid growing up, I did not have the perspective that I did when I was older, and the conscious engagement that I had when I experienced later in life the car accidents and the close calls, where I could literally feel that choice. It was just like hanging in the air. Very disconcerting experience. Again, that triggered in me a deeper reflection on what it is that I wanted out of life and what I considered life to be, and really deepened my own commitment to myself. There's I mean, there's a lot that I could talk about in this respect. There's like, I mean, the other side, I mean, April's absolutely right. The other side is all love. The whole concept of heaven and hell and that separation of the two is part of the illusion, is part of the program, is part of the conditioning, is part of keeping us separate, of keeping us from reconnecting with source. And it's really important to understand that anyone who does choose to leave, you know, at that soul level, choosing to pass on, is doing so at a level where, yeah, they've gotten to a gate where they can leave. And they've chosen, and sometimes people do succumb to the weight of their learning because they have chosen to learn an awful lot. And sometimes the depth of that is quite overwhelming. And it can be where exactly as April said, where it's just like, okay, we're done. That's it. There's no more. There's no more right now. I've met a couple people who I could literally feel that in them a couple months before they passed on. One of them was one of my great uncles, where I shook his hand on one visit, and I literally went 3 months. I was just like shaking his hand, going, "Oh, wow, hey, how's it going?" You know, and yeah, 3 months later, he was gone. And literally to the day, it was 90 days, boom. And it was interesting because in that moment of, in those moments when you can listen, I'm sort of like, I'm getting all teary-eyed here, feeling that space of information, of sharing the fact that his soul was open to share that information with me, that space of transitioning that he was stepping into so clearly. I mean, I was not right for like 3 days because it was so loud. And, you know, looking back, I just feel absolutely blessed and privileged to have been able to be in a space to hear him and to feel him. And he was an angry, bitter old man. He was an old school, you know, salt of the earth farmer. And you could just feel it in the air. You could just feel it in the air. He was done. He was done. He'd done everything that he'd ever wanted to do. And you could feel him sort of go, well, okay. And it taught me an awful lot about accepting the passing, accepting that threshold, and feeling like, you know, because I've been around people, I've been around family members and friends who then later passed. But with my great uncle Martin, it was very specific, like, and I could literally feel in that moment his entire life, from when he was born up into that moment where we shook hands, and it literally melted my brain. And I just sort of like decided to just wander around the house and let my grandpa and his brother catch up and just sort of like recover from feeling so much. And that's, you know, one of my points of references for understanding that space of being open, of letting yourself feel, of being present, of it being just a natural space. And when you get there, it just happens. And it's just like those exit points. When you get to those spaces, it just happens. And it is one of those things where it is a soul decision. And as you know, and when we begin to look at the sadness and the grief that comes from transitioning and transmuting those connections that we have with people when they pass on, and looking back and feeling all the gifts that they've actually given us, and the gift of their passing, and the gift of the grief, and having a space where you have a legitimate reason to lose your mind, or to, you know, lose your, because all of that's coming up to the surface, to be emotional, because it's also a learning process to let ourselves be emotional and to learn our own emotional language. And that is part of the information of feeling those exit points, of understanding that connection to that level of awareness, that soul awareness, of having your emotional wisdom, your emotional intelligence right there at the surface, open, like, you know, the blossoming lotus flower, being able to just accept the rain and grow from the rain the way you're supposed to, instead of like closing up and clamping down and shutting everything out, blossoming the way that we're supposed to, with the light and the dark, or what we tell ourselves is the dark, but it's still information, it's still divine information, opening up and blossoming like, you know, the rose petals on a bush in the garden, or the lotus flowers, the lilies in the pond, however you want to look at it. That rain is there to nourish us. It is always there to nourish us. It is there to educate us. It is there to help us grow. Every single drop of rain is there to help us grow and to support us in walking our path.
Thank you, Kelly. And what both Dr. Eben Alexander and Seth in Jane Roberts in the book Seth Speaks talks about, Seth says, not only are we learning, like we not only chose this soul contract and we are here on this earth learning, but also in the other realm, they're guides, and the guides help us learn. But the understanding is not so much as a mental understanding of the brain processing and then we are learning, right? It's more at a very psychic, telepathic level, that there are games played and there's learning on the other side as well. So the soul may exit, and once it exits, it may actually choose to stay there for a little while, or how many ever in chronological terms, we may say 800 years or 100 years or 200 years, and then take a rebirth if it so chooses. Some don't even choose to come take a rebirth. They may just stay in the other realm and do their learning. Some may say, okay, I'm going to choose back and learn through another lifetime. The other thing that you said, Kelly, was about heaven and hell. So since Eileen has never believed in God and heaven and hell, how does that, I kind of feel that that also is our sorrow, right? That maybe they went to hell, because the traditional way of thinking is, oh, this person may have done something, and now when they pass away, so there's all the more the hurt, right? Maybe my mother or father, whoever is passing away, they may have gone to hell because that's what we've been trained.
Yes, exactly. The concepts of heaven and hell are man-made.
Right.
And I do not say this to, you know, dismiss anyone with strong religious beliefs. This is my own personal experience from having so many experiences myself, out-of-body experiences, and experiencing those little train station sit-down place with those other people and talking about what's going on while I'm watching people trying to, you know, defibrillate me back up, kind of thing. Yeah, it's a human construction, and it is based on judgment. You know, heaven and hell. It's like, oh, if you're good, you're going to go to heaven. If you're bad, you're going to go to hell. And anyone that I don't like is bad, so they're all going to hell. So like, I feel better about myself, so I must be a good person. So I'm like going to heaven. Kind of, you know, loop. One of those loops. One of those ego loops. And again, you know, I totally respect, you know, religious beliefs. I was raised in a very religious family. It is just my personal experience and opinion. And, you know, as April and I have talked about, as we've talked about tonight, the other side, like creation, like God is love. The fire and brimstone of the Old Testament, that's, you know, you got to wonder where some of that came from.
It came from what?
Edits. If you know the history of the Bible and how many languages it went through before it got, yeah, exactly, you know, yeah, before it got to English or Old English, or Emperor Constantine put it, yeah, anyhow, whole other conversation. But
so even 2,000 years ago, human beings use, whoever wrote the scripture, use fear, which is what some people were blaming our past president, right, of fear mongering. That condition pattern has existed for
a long time.
2,000 years.
Long time. Yep.
So the hell is the fear mongering.
Yep.
Thank you, Kelly. Eileen, did you want to talk about, we'll end on this, but I'll go around, talk about the hell, because you wouldn't be affected, right? Who is really...
Mm-mm. No, I never understood all of that. It never, like I think I've said a couple of times that I've always been very scientific and logical, and it just never made sense to me. Whereas I am a very spiritual person, I understand now. But it makes sense that, you know, honoring a person or not person, or none of that made sense to me. But connecting to source and knowing that our emotions and feelings and beliefs can control our reality, like that does make sense to me. And so no, none of that stuff never made any sense to me. But I don't judge others ever.
Thank you, Eileen. Caesar, you wanted to speak about what is this heaven and hell? And
Sure, I'll speak on that briefly. I don't think it's a geographical place where we go when we die. My personal opinion. I think it's honestly one of the biggest lies ever told in the history of spirituality. And that, I think, probably relates to some fear mongering too. You can't scare me into doing what is right. What feels good, what is loving, what is compassion. I think heaven and hell we create here on earth through our experiences. I believe that when you do something willingly, with passion, I believe that is heaven. And to the contrary, I believe when we do something that we like, a job that you don't like per se, you have to work to earn money to provide for yourself. And you do that unwillingly. It's just you're not passionate about it. You hate being there. I believe that is the hell that we speak of. And it's just a never ending cycle of the, reality that you create. And I think almost every religion speaks on the geographical nature of heaven and hell. And, I always said religions are nothing more than a set of belief systems. They're beneficial. They can be great. Any religion. And I still study almost every religion. And I believe that every religion still has the same essence at the core of all of their teachings, whether it's Buddhism, Zen, regardless of what it is. I think the essence of every spiritual teaching at its core remains the same. But the nature of heaven and hell definitely is a construct that we create here on earth as our realities through what we do that feels right. I love the Dalai Lama's message, if your religion was just love, just be kind. Love is the religion. And if you work out of that basis, you're always going to work with source energy, the loving nature of all that is. As we are an extension of that, you can never, ever be wrong. You can never go wrong. And that is creating your heaven. So I'll end with that.
Perfect. Thank you, Caesar. And that's why we took birth on this earth, right? That was the lesson. The lesson was unconditional love. Until we can get, our soul can get to that evolution where moment to moment, present moment to present moment to present moment, we are always unconditional love, no matter how many tragedies, no matter what is going on, no matter how many COVID cases go on.
And again, the contrast has to be there. You have to experience the hell of your reality to understand, like Travis says, is to appreciate the heaven. You know, without the darkness, we wouldn't understand what light is, and silence and noise and so on and so forth.
Perfect. Thank you. April, did you want to talk about heaven and hell? You're going to have a different perspective, I know.
I think it is a concept in our minds. I think that it is part of the religious dogma that we have been taught. And it's funny, because I was just talking to somebody, and it's funny how these beliefs, these cultural beliefs, are so ingrained, and we believe them to be truth, literal truth. You know, and I mean, some people they're willing to die for them because they're so true. And, you know, I was very much, you know, I've talked about this before, but like Eileen, it just never made sense to me. None of that ever made any sense to me. I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand how you're going to send me to hell, and you're going to burn me. Why? Why are you doing that to me? I mean, I know I might not be the most perfect person, but I don't think I need to. So I have this, you know, I remember when I was, I wanted to get a divorce from my first husband. I went months through turmoil that I was going to go to hell. And that, I think, was the beginning of my spiritual awakening, like really the beginning, because I had to wrestle with the idea that I was going to go to hell because I was getting a divorce from an abusive alcoholic. Did that make sense? Like, how do you make sense out of this, really? And then if I ever had any other children, my children were going to be bastard children. And oh my gosh, I can't even handle life now. I don't even know what's going on. Right. And then I realized, which I think we all realize, is that God is love. He's not condemning. He's not judging. He's not looking for you're right, you're wrong. He's not looking for any of that. He is love, period. He's not standing there judging you. He's just not. And when you really start to understand what God really is, the concept of God, that vibration of love, but love is the highest vibration. And then there's a scale and it goes down from there. So you can have love, you can have joy, bliss, excitement, but the top is love. There's nothing else besides love. That's it, the top, right? Well, he's there. That's where he is. He doesn't know. Does that really okay, seriously, does that really make sense to you? He's love, but he has judgment? What? Guys, come on. You know, and this is just how I like, let's put it together here. God is all love. That's all he is. That all he knows. He is, but he has anger and he has judgment and he has discernment. Really? No, he doesn't. He's just love. That's it. Okay. Anything else than that, anything besides that, is a matter of how far away from God you are, and that is hell. That's it.
Thank you, April. Somebody brought up the rejection, the topic that we've talked about, mother rejecting them, right? And that is what I told her is until you can be like planetary intelligence or be like source and unconditionally love your mother is going to, she's the mirror, right? Because we are having the limiting belief that she's going to reject. So, many of us think that, oh, my mother does not love me, but the inner being of the mother, because the inner being of us and the inner being of the mother is one and the same. We are all source. So the inner being of the mother is always loving you. Yeah, on the surface, it may be that the mother is not loving you, or you may say she's rejecting me. But like you were saying, April, God, and each form is source. So their inner being is loving us unconditionally all the time. And we are our inner being, yeah, on the surface, we may say we are rejecting, or my mother is rejecting, but our inner being is in the depth of who we are, is unconditionally loving the mother. That's the biggest lesson, that if he can learn that, if he can be that, that would be it. Travis, did you want to say something about this? The heaven and the hell.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. It's a good topic.
It's a great topic. I love the notion that I might be an authority on heaven and hell, and that other people might want to hear what I have to say on the matter is comical to me. I don't know who I am to say these things. So, but I think, for me, well, okay, so one thing is that there are these social collective long-standing narratives that we agree upon as groups. And if you agree with this narrative, you'll be rewarded. And if you disagree with this narrative, you'll be punished. You don't get to be a part of the group. So there are rewards for those who choose to agree with whatever certain, I guess in a way, that's what these organized religions can be, is these collective egoic entities. Not that there isn't a thread of truth woven throughout, because it is there to find. But I know for myself, when I look around at humanity, all of us alive today and all that have come before me, I go, well, I don't want to look to most humans to be the authority for me as to what is true, what is truth. Because in my reckoning, most of us don't have it all put together all that well. So I want to go straight to the source. I want to go, can I cut out the middleman? I don't need an interpreter. I want to go and drink from the mouth of the stream. I want to go knock on heaven's door, whatever, I don't know what, but I want a direct line. I don't want to play a weird game of telephone and get the message jumbled up. So for me, one thing that's useful is to, rather than make these things nouns, rather than make heaven and hell places, and rather than make God and the devil entities, I look at them more like qualities. Is that an adjective? I don't know. But so, for instance, you'd have heavenliness as a quality. It's a quality. We know that quality. It's recognizable. Hellishness. I've had moments that were hellish. I've had moments where I go, this is hell. I've screamed it out loud. and so that would be a moment of hell, a hellish moment. I've also seen myself be godly in ways at times. And I've also seen myself be devilish in ways. And at the times that I've been devilish, it reaps a hellish quality that I must endure. It's usually not a good idea. And so one could, like, that's why I so much adore Eckhart Tolle's such exquisite use and choice in words when he calls it unconsciousness. Because anyone in their right mind, anyone who's in touch, they wouldn't do these things. They wouldn't do devilish things that yield hellish qualities. Why would anybody do that? And the thing, and because it's all in a shared space too, it's like if it was poured, it's like if we were all swimming in a swimming pool and you were attempting to affect somebody negatively by putting something gross or toxic in the pool. Well, we're all in the pool together. So we're all in a shared space here. So whatever any suffering anybody else has to endure, I endure it with them because I'm in a shared field with everybody else. So of course, I only want to make a better space for all of us. That's more conscious, that's more enlightened, that's more godly. So if I can not want anything for myself, you know, if I can be tender and loving and kind and allow people some patience and space, things like that, those are the things that are gonna, that's the kind of space that things bloom and blossom in. And so to me, rather than look at it as a location and time and space or an entity that is condemning or judging or praising or rewarding, or it's really just these qualities might be, it's just another perspective to entertain that could serve, be useful. So that's just, you know, a perspective I'll offer, and that works for me sometimes. And I guess I'll end on, I have this wonderful book here that I've been looking at because I just love Ramana Maharshi, and I noticed too, Ryan had, and so this, but the book is called Heart is Thy Name, O Lord. So I'll end with that.
I thought you were going to read out of the book.
No, you don't have to read the book. This is all.
Heart is Thy Name, O Lord.
You just see his face and the title, and you don't even need to look inside. But it's really good on the inside too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're talking about being hellish. One thing when you were talking about your mother, Travis, I forgot to say is I watched a video of, I think Sadhguru is coming out with a book called Karma. And so he was talking about his previous lifetimes. And he has been a slave 3 times. 3 lifetimes before his current lifetime. So look what can happen. Like, you can be tortured. He was hung, he was beaten, he was tortured as one lifetime of a slave. The second one lifetime, his slave master didn't even want to touch him, would just use a stick to touch him. He wouldn't touch the slave. So look what happens by the time you come to the 4th lifetime. He is like one of the spiritual thought leaders of this planet, right? Millions, if not billions, because India has billions in population, millions follow him. So every person has a redemptive quality to them. And your mother passing away on Easter is that redemptive. On Resurrection Day, she's resurrecting. Here she was one, but look at the transformation that can happen in that exit point, right? What a resurrection it can be, the evolution of the soul as the spirit leaves the form. So thank you. Kelly, do you want to wrap up the session about heaven and hell or anything? I'll let you finish.
Okay. Well, I've already mentioned, you know, the illusion of heaven and hell. When you pass over, it's, I mean, depending on which concept of reality you adhere to, and whether or not you, you know, have looked into the board of karma, that sort of like, you know, gives you a framework for your next embodiment or what. it's basically boils down to the fact that we have created as humans concepts of reality for personal leverage, private leverage, emotional leverage, intellectual leverage, to frame our reality and to help us understand what we experience and what we feel. And, you know, the concepts of heaven and hell are, you know, a narrative in the illusion. And from what I've experienced, what I experienced when I was a child, all the out-of-body experiences that I had were very, very contrary to what I was reading about in the Bible and experiencing in churches and stuff like that. So, you know, right from the get-go, I had this completely other set of information that just sort of went, you know, and it just grew from there. And again, this is my personal experience. I really respect religious communities. I really respect religions and how they build communities and how they help people see commonalities. Because as far as I'm concerned, that is the whole point, is for us to all see our commonalities, for us to all understand how we're all connected and how that connection is love. And it's about love. It's about feeling love. It's about understanding love between all of us. So whether you believe in heaven and hell, and whether or not you're a staunch, firm believer in a faith, and you adamantly, completely accept that heaven and hell exist, everyone's path, everyone's perception is their own free will to create and shape. And I personally do not believe in heaven and hell at all. And it's always interesting to talk about these topics and to hear and feel where people are at. But my experiences have shown me quite succinctly that the main narrative and the cultural leveraging that has happened, the cultural exchange and learning experiences, like the Crusades, you know, they're all there about a learning experience, about us understanding how not to do things that tear us apart, but to see beyond the pain and to understand how we can come together in love.
Thank you, Kelly. So would it mean that whoever was interpreting the heaven and hell, maybe they were talking about the first revision was actually about, maybe hell was the ego, the forewarning against being the ego, and heaven was the intuition or the conscious mind, but somebody misinterpreted. Through the translations, it got misinterpreted. And now hell became a place that people were sent to.
It actually evolved out of Dante's Inferno. In the 14th century, when Dante wrote the Inferno and he had the 9 levels of hell, there was this concept that the church had begun to sort of use to scare people to being better Christians. Okay. But after Dante had written his Inferno and about the descent into hell, it became a physical place, and then it had all these extrapolations, and then Hollywood happened, and we had all these movies that keep twisting and distorting. I mean, the image of the horned beast or Satan with the horns and whatnot is actually the vilification or the demonization of the god Loki. From Norse mythology, Loki always wore a horned helmet, and he was considered the trickster. He's like the coyote in First Nation cosmology, except he wore a horned helmet. So the way that the church got the northern pagans to demonize Loki is by turning him into that goat-headed beast people refer to as Satan. So Dante's Inferno caused it to be a concrete concept of an actual physical place. Before then, it really wasn't anything other than you be a good person or be a bad person, right? Kind of thing.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Yep. And this is where I feel a teaching like Eckhart's actually helps, because if we use his teachings, develop the presence power or the alignment with inner beingness, and then go back and read the scripture, we may see these parts and drop them, right?
Yep.
Because these are not going to serve us. What is going, the spiritual depth in the scripture is what is going to serve us, because like hell or some kind of dimension that is hellish is also in Hindu religion. The concept is there in Hindu religion. And I don't think that there's like a gods and there were these many gods and God, that thing exists. It's just some kind of metaphor for something else. And from this absolute, then we can see that. Eileen, we didn't get any questions. Did they ever post anything?
We did not. No.
But people are watching?
Yeah.
People are commenting?
There was lots of comments about the conversation, but no actual
wow.
questions. Except I think a specific question from Samar to Kelly, and he answered that.
Okay.
His, uncle.
Awesome. Beautiful. I am like, it has
amazing.
Been exactly. It has been such a down to my knees in humility and gratitude kind of amazing experience. An honor and a privilege always for everyone here and everyone online. Love you all so much. Thank you so much. Many blessings. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you all Friday for group meditation. Caesar,
happy early birthday, Kelly.
Happy birthday to your daughter as well.
Thank you.
Night.
Happy birthday. Enjoy your day. Bye. Much love.
Bye.